Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another video. And I wanted to do something a little different. I had an idea for a series that I wanted to do. I'm not sure if this will be a long series or just a couple of videos. Right now I only have an idea for about 3 videos in the series, but I was thinking about doing a series that's loosely titled, Is Dean Koontz Really as Bad as I Remember Him? I know I speak a lot of smack about Dean Koontz over the years and have said some various things about his books and his writing, and so I've decided, is it really as bad as I think, as I remember, or am I just looking at this through an incorrect lens? So I decided to go back and to reread a few of his books. Now that I have the perspective of time, now that I have fresh set of eyes, now that I have some experience under my belt, so to speak. I think the last time I read a Dean Koontz book, I was still a teenager. I have literally not read Koontz in decades. And I read a lot of his stuff, and I was a very voracious reader of Koontz, and then I got to a point where I was just, I guess, tired of it. So I figured, what is a better way to start this type of series than to go back and reread the very first Dean Koontz book that I ever read. And that would be 1987's, I think it's 87, Watchers. This was the first book of his that I ever read. So I went and I reread it to see what I think of it now and how does it hold up. Honestly, I only have about 3 video ideas for a series like this. One is Watchers, and then the other 2 are the other 2 books that I read, the first 3 books of his that I read, which was Lightning, and then which was Midnight. And so I think maybe the next book I'll read will be Lightning, because I remember that sort of being the second book of his that I read. But today we're going to talk about Watchers. We're going to talk about a little bit about Watchers. We're going to talk a little bit about Koontz. We're going to talk a little bit about his writing style, what he is and is not, and what this book is and is not, and we'll go from there. So, like I said, this was the very first book of his that I ever read. I'm going to double check the year on it. Yeah, it was 87. This was the first book of his that I ever read. And this is kind of universally, I guess, known that this is the book that sort of broke Koontz into the mainstream. This is really what got a lot of eyeballs on his work. Now, you have to remember that Koontz had been writing prior to this for almost 2 decades. He did some writing in the 60s. He wrote all through the 70s and most of the 80s, because this came out at the tail end of the 80s. So he had already been writing. He already had lots of books under his belt. He is a very voracious writer. I think he's written something like 130 books. All kinds of books through all kinds of genres. He's written fantasy, romance, thrillers, suspense novels, mysteries. He even wrote a children's series of books about his dog Trixie. He's written all kinds of books. Koontz is really the sort of the poster child for quantity over quality, I think, in a lot of ways. But he had been writing prior to this for about 2 decades. He had written under various pseudonyms. He has many pseudonyms. I think he may be one of, if not the writer with the most pseudonyms, most pen names. I know of about 6, 7, maybe 10. Lee Nichols was one of his most famous pen names that he wrote under. A lot of the older books that he wrote, I think things like the Mask and House of Thunder and all that stuff. All the stuff that came out in the 70s, may have been published under Lee Nichols. But he's a prolific writer, so it's sort of interesting that sort of up until this point, people were reading him, but I guess he was more like of a culty author. Like, he was just low-key, pumping out these books. Sometimes he'd pump out 2-3 books a year. And that's part of the reason why he has so many pen names, is that he didn't want to saturate the market, one, under Dean Koontz, because nobody would probably read him, at least that's what he figured. And also he wanted to put out genres that he didn't necessarily want to attach to his own name, right? Things like the romance genre. There is some apocryphal writing out there that states that he may have written adult books, porn, under some pseudonyms. That's apocryphal. We don't really know that, but that's floating around out there. I mean, it was the 70s, so it is possible that he did. And if he did, so what, right? So what? I mean, I'm not going to shame the guy for doing that. If he did, so did Anne Rice. Anne Rice did the same thing under Rochelot. She had a pen name, and she wrote smut. So, no shame in that game. I'm not gonna ding anybody for that. But up until that, it was just underground, and then Watchers came out, and Watchers, for some reason, it broke, it hit. It was the breakout book for Koontz, and it was a very simple book when you think about it. This book, I know, is almost about 500 pages long. We'll get to that, but it's a simple book. Story of a man, Travis Cornell, and a woman, Nora Devon, who meet, and it's also the story of an underground, malicious, malevolent lab. It's a lab that's doing experimentation. They're doing experimentation on animals, and so they're tweaking the genetics of creatures and things. And so the lab produced two things. It produced a golden retriever, who was exactly just a straight golden retriever, but he had the intelligence of humans. So he was as smart and as self-aware and as sentient as any human. He just happened to be a dog. He was a dog, golden retriever. And then they created this thing, this patchwork Frankenstein demon-like creature. They were trying to create a super soldier, a thing that could go fight in the front lines and would be completely obedient, and it would be completely bloodthirsty. And those were the two things they were working on. They created both. Those two things broke out of the lab. They went on the run. And they eventually crossed the path of Travis and then Nora, brought them together. And that's essentially the story, is that the two, Travis and Nora, and the dog that they named Einstein, they're on the run. And they're on the run from this creature that the lab created, that they call simply the Outsider. But they're also on the run from the CIA. They're on the run from the government agencies. They're on the run from the police. They're on the run from the crazy lab people. They're just on the run because everybody's trying to get their hands back on the dog and back on the creature thing. And so that's essentially the story. Two people on the run with government experimented creatures. This is the first book that included a dog, a golden retriever specifically. And this was the first time that Koontz put a dog in his book. Not the last time, though. That move proved to be so popular with the people that were reading his book that he eventually puts a dog, I believe, in every novel going forward after that. I think that's one of the things that made this a breakout hit. It was the dog. I mean, it got a lot of people reading, and for some reason, somebody thought it was worthy enough to have not one, not two, but 3 movies That's right. Watchers 1, Watchers 2, Watchers 3. Don't know how they thought they could drag this out for 3 films, but they did. And so it became a hit, right? But one of the big misconceptions, I think, about this book, and I think about Koontz in general, and I think about maybe what I was coming after, is that a lot of people assume that this is a horror novel and that Koontz is a horror writer. But he's not. This is not a horror novel. It has maybe some horrifying elements. There's some murders and some little bit of gore, but it's not a horror novel. And Koontz is not a horror writer. If you go into Dean Koontz expecting to have horror on the level of a King or a Clive Barker or people like that, or a Robert McCammon, you're going to be disappointed because he's not a horror writer. What I would say he is a suspense thriller writer. So a lot of his books are suspenseful and they have thriller elements, but they're not horror books. Most of his bad guys are human. There may be some supernatural elements in there, but a lot of the bad guys in the books are just people that work for shady organizations. They work for malicious labs. They're these crazy scientist people. He likes to write a lot of science gone wrong type stories. And there will be horrible things that happen in the stories. There will be violent things that happen in the stories. There may even be some pseudo-supernatural things that happen in the story. But at the end of the day, it's all man-driven. It's all human-driven. It's all created by evil scientists or evil people or shady organizations. So while there may be elements of everything in his books, including fantasy, romance, all of that, he's not that one type of writer. He's a suspense thriller writer with elements of all kinds of genres just thrown in there. So he's kind of a hodgepodge. You can't really say he's this, that, or the other thing. But I can say that if you're looking for horror, true horror, King-type horror, it's not Koontz. Now, does that mean he's bad? But that's the question we have to ask ourselves, right? Is he as bad as I've been saying that he was? So let's talk about a little bit about the story. And I think a lot of his books are the way that they are because of the way that he writes. A lot of people write, like King will do this, he'll write out a first draft, he'll just put it all on paper from end to end, and then he'll take the manuscript and he'll put it away, like in a drawer somewhere. Then he'll forget about it for like 6 months. And then he'll go back to the manuscript, now that it's out of his head, with a fresh set of eyes, and then he'll start the editing process and the refining process and going through and making it what it'll finally be, right? What I was able to determine about Koontz's writing is that he does that as he writes. So every paragraph has to be done. Every page has to be done. So he will meticulously go over paragraphs and pages until that page of what he's trying to say is correct to him. And then he'll go on to the next page and to the next page. He's constantly editing and refining and going as he's going along. And he has this constant process of refinement. And then, now I don't know if there's a final editing job done when the book is done, but that tells me that Dean Koontz is very detail-driven, detail-oriented, very meticulous. And when you read his books, you can see that as you read. Because, number one, he describes everything. The people, what they look like, what color their hair, what they're wearing. All of this down to like the minutest detail. They've got a freckle on their face, or maybe they've got one finger shorter than the others. He will describe environments, right? He will say things like you walk into somebody's kitchen and there'll be this on the counter and that on the counter, this type of rug, those types of curtains, this type of appliance. He really loves the details, and he really writes the details. And that kind of sort of feels like the story is dragged out, maybe a little bit. Maybe it feels like filler. Maybe it feels like padding. But he's very, very detail-oriented in what he does. Now, while this is a suspense thriller novel, and while there are moments where action happens, there are large swaths of the book where nothing happens. And by nothing, I mean nothing. There's a large part of the book where they talk about how they learned to communicate with Einstein. Then we're going to talk about their relationship. Then we're going to talk about his ex-wife. Then we're going to talk about her crazy aunt. Then there's a big period of the book where there's a marriage and they get married, and then there's a housewarming, and there's all of this sort of minutia things going on. That's a large chunk of the middle of the book. The middle of the book feels like if you were to take out the couple of, like if you were to take out The Outsider and the couple of action pieces, it would feel like you're reading a Lifetime movie novel. And there's a lot of that going on. There was a lot of like feeling this is a Lifetime event that's just sort of sprinkled in with some horrible things that are happening. But we still haven't answered the fact of whether is it good or not. We'll get there. So the book is long. I don't want to feel like it's dragged out, because at no point did I feel bored. I think his writing is okay, is good. If you don't mind the over descriptive prose that he does. Characters. There's not many characters in the book, probably a handful. Well fleshed out. And for being a nearly 500 page book, and for being really light on action, I thought it went okay. I mean, there were definitely parts of it I think I probably would have left on the cutting room floor. I think it definitely required some more editing. But at the end of the day, it told the story that it wanted to tell, and I think it did that in a sufficient manner. And the beginning was good. The ending was, I think, appropriate. The science explanation was appropriate. I didn't feel like it was far-fetched. I didn't feel like it came out of left field. So overall, the book was okay. It's not scary. It's not horrifying. It's not any of those things. But at the end of the day, it is just okay. Now, where this idea of Dean Koontz being maybe not one of the better authors comes from, see, it doesn't come from a single book, and it doesn't come from 2 books or 3 books. But what it comes from is the more of his stuff that you read, the more you begin to realize that he's writing in a pattern. A lot of his books follow the same type of pattern. Male protagonist, female protagonist, there's going to be a dog involved, there's going to be maybe some pseudoscience involved, there's going to be some shady government officials involved, but he tends to follow the formula over and over and over and over again, and once you've read 10, 12, 15, 20 books of his, I feel like maybe you've read the same book over and over again, just with different people, different dressing. That's where I think this whole idea of Koontz being a hack, at least in my mind, comes from. And I wouldn't say he's a hack, but I would say a better word for him is formulaic. He's extremely formulaic. It's like he found a formula, that hit and worked, and then he's going to write that into the ground for the next 20 years. And that's sort of where I stopped reading Koontz, when I realized that, hey, This is the 20th book of his that I've read, and it feels like all of the other ones. Same formula, same ideas. They just jumbled it up a little bit more and made it a different book. So is Dean Koontz really as bad as I make him out to be? No. But just know that he is extremely formulaic, that he's not for everybody. He's very detail-oriented. He is meticulous in his writing. And he's not grab you by the throat horror. And if that's what you're looking for, that's not Koontz. But there is a reason that you find a lot of his books in the bargain bookstores, in the thrift shops. Because just like James Patterson, people will read Dean Koontz on vacation. And then when they're done, they'll just, I don't want this anymore, and off he goes. So he's very much a vacation type read, where you go to the beach, you go on vacation, you go to the beach, you need something to read while you're there. You go into a bookstore and you go, there's the newest Patterson, or there's the newest Koontz. I like that stuff. I'll pick it up and then I'm going to read it, but you're really not going to remember it tomorrow. And you're just going to take the book down to you're going to donate it, throw it out, leave it at the hotel, give it to somebody. Unless you are really, really into that type of writing. So, is he really as bad as I make him out to be? No, because at least he writes his own books. At least he doesn't have a team of people writing under his name, right? At least he puts the work in. He writes his own novels. He doesn't have ghostwriters, to my knowledge. Or at least he's doing the work. You get props for that. He's doing the work. Even if he's doing the same work over and over again. He's doing the work. That's fine. So he's not probably as big of a hack as I have made him out to be, but he's certainly not in the same ballpark as a King or a Barker or a McCammon or any of a dozen other writers of horror and suspense thrillers that I could probably spit out. He, at the end of the day, is just okay. And he's formulaic. And if you just want a cheap, quick read that you can get through relatively unscathed and without too many problems, that's Koontz in a nutshell. I'm going to read 2 more of his books because I remember really liking Watchers, Lightning, and Midnight. But I'm going to read 2 more, and I'll probably put up 2 more videos. Whether I continue down the Koontz path or not, I don't know. Some of it is up to you guys, whether you want to hear about Koontz's writings or not. If you're interested in following along with him, he is prolific. He's got more books than King. So if you're interested in following along, maybe I'll do some more. But it's really going to be a tolerance thing, right? I'm gonna read it until I can't really tolerate reading it anymore, if that makes any sense. And then we'll go from there. Then we will reassess. So that's my review of this. I gave it a 3 on Goodreads. I introduced a few other people in my Discord to it. They weren't impressed. I can understand that. I understand that. And coming into this, after years of reading much better books, I can see why this would leave you unimpressed. I get it. You know, it's like being served a plate of food, but there's no spices in it. Spice it up, man. Spice it. Put some spices on it. It's not going to kill you. Give it a little Flavor Town. Hoo-yah. But that's kind of what he feels like. I don't know. Flavorless chili. It's fine. It's just not the best. So guys, that is my review of Watchers by Dean R. Koontz. Next book I'm going to read is Lightning. I do remember liking that one a lot. And I do remember the twists of it. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I'll talk about it in the video. The review next time. So guys, what did you think? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Dean Koontz and his books? And have you read them? And do you like them? No shame in the game. If you like it, if you like Koontz, I'm glad that you like Koontz. No No aspersions here will be cast ever. If you like something that I say I don't like, I will never cast aspersions on anyone, because this is your reading game, just like this is my reading game. And our reading games are all different, and they're all valid, and there are no aspersions here. So guys, what did you think? Do you read Koontz? Do you like him? What do you like about him? What have you read by him? What are some of the standout books of his that you really liked that you think maybe I should take a look at? Because I did stop. I think I stopped after a book called TikTok, oddly enough. Maybe Dragon's Tears. I don't know. He's got so many. So guys, leave your comments down below and let me know what you think about this or about anything, as always. And as always, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. Give it a subscribe. Share it around. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Tell the people who may or may not like Koontz. And as always, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will see you in the next video.